Micromaster City is under attack again by Megatron and his minions. Who saves the day? The Predacons. These little guys will help anybody out who needs rescuing. These 5 little rescue vehicles will form into Defensor. I, Defensor, will save the day. Technobots, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required. As the Autobots work on their defenses, mighty Megatron comes out of the darkness, bringing along Motormaster and the Stunticons. Megatron gives them the order to transform! The poor little Autobots have no idea what to do. They pull in Defensor. Megatron gives out the order for the Stunticons to assemble! These 5 Stunticons form into Minosaur! Who's gonna win this battle? Minosaur or Defensor? The fate of the Autobots is in your hands. Stunticons, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required.
In the world of Generation 2, Ironhide sits in his surveillance mode, waiting to see if there's any Decepticons. And then, they attack! Ironhide transforms from his van mode into a robot. Who comes to his aid? Generation 2 Hound. As the two look up to the sky, who do they see? Skywarp, then being circled around by Thundercracker. Skywarp decides to take robot mode. As they descend for an attack, Thundercracker decides to fire a missile. Who's going to win this battle? The battle is your command. Generation 2 Transformers, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, vehicles and figures sold separately.
In the world of Generation 2, Mirage is trying to escape the Predacons, but it suddenly gets cut off. Who comes to the rescue? Ultra Magnus. Armed with his new titanium armor and a rocket launcher, but the Predacons have a plan of their own. They decide to form Abominus as these gigantic robots begin their battle. The battle is in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, vehicles and figures sold separately. On the Autobot cybertronian base, they are preparing to ship some supplies. Suddenly, they are interrupted by Astro Train. Deep within the city comes out Blitzwing. To the Autobots' demise, Sandstorm comes to the rescue. As Blitzwing tries to help out Astro Train, he is interrupted by Broadside. What happens to the Autobots are in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, vehicles and figures sold separately. In the world of Generation 2, the Autobots are peacefully living on Earth, taking care of business and trying to build up the city. Their plans are interrupted by Abominus. Abominus begins to wreak havoc as the Autobots decide to call for help. On a nearby planet, there's a small base set up there. Countdown and the other Autobots are busy trying to prep the other rocket. This other rocket's quite not ready, so they have to bring out Omega Supreme. Omega Supreme gets the order to go ahead and launch to go help out his Autobot buddies on Earth. Omega finally makes it to Earth and begins trumping his way to the city to help his buddies. Abominus catches eye of this and tries to fire off a round. Omega's claw grabs him and slams him to the ground. What happens next is in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, vehicles and figures sold separately, batteries not included. In the world of Generation 2, Rampage is up to no good. Predacons comes down for the kill. Nose comes checking the radar. He decides to contact the rest of the Technobots as Lightspeed catches a glimpse of what is actually going on.
Computron and Predacons battle it out. The fate of Cybertron is in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, figures sold separately.
In the world of Generation 2, Optimus Prime finds out word that the Decepticons as the Autobots start helping out with repairs in Chicago. Things are going smoothly. As Optimus Prime checks in along with Bumblebee to see how their progress is going. Suddenly, their progress is interrupted by Devastator. Devastator starts having his way with the entire that's trying to rebuild this poor city. As Optimus Prime looms into the viewfinder, seeing what is going on, he calls on the train bots. When the train bots arrive, they begin to transform and turn into Raiden. Raiden looks down at Optimus, and Optimus looks up and says, "Go and take care of Devastator before the city is destroyed." As Devastator looms and destroys the city, Raiden just steps into his way. As Raiden scowls at Devastator, the battle is about to commence. The fate of Chicago is in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, vehicles and figures sold separately. In the world of Generation 2, Dirge is busy destroying the streets. As Trax is trying to do his patrol, he keeps avoiding every laser blast, and suddenly, he just gets fed up. Trax decides to take his flight mode because he's tired of Dirge tampering with everything. As the two decide to engage, they decide to transform. The fate of Cybertron is in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, vehicles and figures sold separately.
In the world of Generation 2, Sunstreaker's just out for a little cruise. Suddenly, his cruise is interrupted by the sound of a jet. As this jet sits there above him, he decides to transform. Turns out this jet is Generation 2 thrust. What happens next is in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, vehicles and figures sold separately. In the world of Generation 2, Rook is up to no good. Meanwhile, at the Autobot fire station, Red Alert gives out the order for the rest of the rescue force to transform and respond. Much to their surprise, the fire is still burning. Red Alert commands the other two to transform as Generation 2 Ratchet and Generation 2 Inferno. What happens next is in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers, brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required.
In the world of Generation 2, the Autobot Micromasters are hard at work prepping the Autobot city in case of another Decepticon invasion. Suddenly, Rook pops out of nowhere. Rook has taken orders from the new Decepticon leader Jaxus. He orders the Vehicons to move in. The Vehicons teleport in through their new porting technology. High up in the tower, one of the Micromasters tips off Wheeljack. Wheeljack awaits as he watches Teletran 2 and calls out to Skids and Trailbreaker to assist in the defense. Rook orders the Predacons to attack. Rook is caught by surprise by skids. Rook orders the Predacons to defend him. Suddenly, Trailbreaker crashes the party along with Hoist. With Rook's defenses down, the battle is in your hands. Generation 2 Transformers brought to you by Hasbro. Some assembly required, vehicles and figures sold separately.